So finally, my Neural Quad Cortex has arrived with me here in the studio. I pre-ordered this unit back in October of 2020, and since that point, I've received numerous emails from my distributor basically saying it'll be coming out next month, you'll receive it next month, and finally, this is the month and we have received it. So in today's video, I want to unbox the Quad Cortex and share my first impressions. If you want to see some more demos and tutorials on this unit in particular, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can catch those when I upload them, and also keep a lookout for the link in the video description for when I release my ultimate guide on the Quad Cortex, which will be my full product guide course that will take you through every single setting. Now, I cannot actually believe the Neural Quad Cortex is actually here with me in the studio. First impressions of the unboxing experience, it's been really nice. I love the fact they've got these little cutouts in the foam to protect the pedal in transportation so it's not moving around. That's a really nice touch. Now, the actual build quality of the body, I'm going to be fair and say this is probably the best I've ever seen on a digital amplifier device or pretty much any pedal I have owned. It's got a nice balance between build quality being high and not being extremely heavy. It's pretty lightweight considering the amount of power that's packed into this body. Inside of the box as well, we have a load of accessories. You've got a USB Type-B cable so you can use the audio interface capabilities of the Quad Cortex. I really like that they've provided that. And you also have a power supply. Now, I really like the fact that this power supply doesn't have a huge power brick attached to it. Just a really nice, small, convenient power supply, which is going to make this device nice and easy to set up without having that clunky power brick. There are some rubber feet provided in the accessories box too, so you can stick these to the bottom of your Quad Cortex if you're not using it on a pedal board so it doesn't become scratched. I do wish that they put these in a bag though, as I almost missed them inside of here because they're obviously black and this is black. I almost didn't spot them in the box. So that would have been a little bit nicer if they were bagged up, along with the complementary plectrum that is provided as well. You got a little plectrum here with a neural DSP on and all that type of stuff, which is pretty cool. Something really cool about the foot switches on the Quad Cortex is the fact they double up as adjustments. So you can adjust the gain, for example, the bass, the mid, the treble on your device. This is quite a cool, innovative feature. But first impressions thinking about this feature, it's a huge oversight. I think it's clear why no manufacturers like Kemper or Boss or Line 6 have ever done this on a device before. When you think about a foot switch, what are you using to trigger and turn the foot switch on and off? Obviously, you're using your feet. This device is on the floor. You're using your shoes that you walk everywhere in on all of the different streets. So your shoes are absolutely filthy, filled with all sorts of horrible things that you're going to be clicking these foot switches with. Now, if you use this device for like, let's say 6 months or whatever straight, you're gigging, you're touring, you're really busy, you haven't taken the time to clean the device because you're just so busy with work, and you need to make any adjustments to your presets, you have to take your nice clean hands and physically adjust all of the parameters on these filthy foot switches. Now, right now, it doesn't seem like a problem because I've just literally unboxed this and it is brand new. But in 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, when you're using this every single weekend or every single night, if you are a professional musician, it's not going to be as nice of an experience. Something else I really don't like about the foot switches, and I mentioned this in other videos too, but I just hope that it was going to be a pre-production issue and not a final manufacturer unit like I have now. Now, I really don't like the sideways wobble that is in the actual switches. It's actually embarrassing the amount of wobble that's in a device that's 1,500 pounds here in the UK. Now, obviously, Neural Quad Cortex have tested the foot switches with a robot going up and down like this, and that it clearly works perfectly fine in a controlled environment. But if you look at the sideways wobble on these foot switches, it's absolutely obscene. Look at this wobble that's going left to right, left to right. That's just awful and could potentially break. The main problem is, it's not that this is going to snap off or anything like that. The problem is, as this wobbles to the side and you've got your dirty shoes with all the dust on it, you know, you're playing outside or whatever, all of that dirt will eventually get into this little gap that's constantly getting exposed on the foot switch with the wobble that is in it. And this isn't going to be an issue that's going to appear after a few weeks. This is after you've had the device for months and months and months, maybe even 12, 18 months, and suddenly your foot switches aren't responding correctly because they've maybe got dust inside of them. The worst part about this is you can't even argue that it was intentional from Neural Quad Cortex because the amount of wobble in each foot switch is different. For example, this one wobbles like crazy. These ones here have like a medium wobble, and these ones down here hardly have any play in them. These ones are quite solid, to be fair. But these ones here and up here are abysmal. Taking a look at the rear panel of the Quad Cortex, I'm really impressed with the I/O overall. I like the fact we've got 2 expression ports, so we can either run 2 expression pedals, a volume and a wah, or we could run an expression pedal and an external foot switch. We've got MIDI in and MIDI out, along with MIDI through capabilities. We also have XLR left and right outputs, which is really cool for having some high quality output, especially if you're playing on much larger stages with a lot of stage volume. Then we have 2 send and returns, which is really interesting for using something like a 4 cable method. We also have alternative outputs, output 3 and output 4. If you're using standard guitar jack cables, these will be pretty useful. And we also have a capture out for doing the neural capture. And we also have a headphone jack if you wish to practice in silence in your home. And let's not forget the USB that we mentioned earlier. Now, a really cool thing about the Neural Quad Cortex is that it can run 4 amplifiers simultaneously. So theoretically, your entire band, the bass guitarist, rhythm guitarist, lead guitarist, could run off of a single quad cortex, making it extremely convenient for traveling as it's super lightweight. Now, obviously the quad cortex has only got 2 inputs. So you may be wondering, how can you get the additional 2 inputs? Something that's really cool that I'm very impressed by is inside of the touchscreen, you can customize the input source of the particular row. So for example, you can use input 1 or input 2, but as you can see here, I'm currently using the return from the effects loop. So you've got return 1 and return 2, because obviously we have 2 different effects loops. So that's pretty neat. And also you can do some routing via USB, which will be pretty interesting to find out what that is doing exactly on this particular unit. And you can see if I just play something on my Stratocaster, it's coming through perfectly fine, even though I'm using the return input 1 on the back of the Quad Cortex. So that's something pretty cool that I'm impressed by. First impressions when using the touchscreen is really nice. It's very responsive, the interface is very intuitive, easy to navigate and get around, and I am hoping that something like the touchscreen will help increase the speed it takes to, decrease the time it takes to create presets and patches, especially compared to something like the Kemper Profiler that has quite a arduous and very slow menu system. I'm quite interested to see how this tablet-like design translates on this device. Unfortunately, something that hasn't been resolved since the whole ordeal with the Paul Davids video is the default master output. Now, on every single preset, the default output is always set to 1 and 2. Now, this means if you're not using XLR outputs, when you first use the unit, you have to change the output every single time. So currently, I'm using guitar jack cables on my Quad Cortex as my current mixer only has those inputs available. So when I've been testing out all of these different presets to sort of get a feel of the unit, every single time I've booted in a new patch, I've had to change the output source every single time. And this was something that Paul David mentioned inside of his review, and they claimed that it was beta firmware and all that type of stuff was going to be resolved, but clearly it hasn't. So my first impressions of the Quad Cortex are pretty positive. Although I've mentioned quite a few negatives, I'm mentioning them because the device is so expensive. This costs £1,449 currently here in the UK, so it deserves the scrutiny in particular areas, even if they're extremely minor, because for this price, it should be a pretty flawless experience. When it comes to actually playing it with your guitar, I think it sounds absolutely fantastic. If you are choosing between a Kemper Profiler and a Quad Cortex, this early on, after extensively using the Kemper Profiler for over 2 years, I do think the Quad Cortex is probably the better option right now in 2021. Now, obviously, as time passes and I spend a bit more time with this unit, wait for my full review and you'll find out whether I still feel that way. Now, something that they've nailed with the Quad Cortex is the sustain. A problem I've had with other digital modelers is the lack of organic sustain that the guitar creates. It always has that noise gate style effect where it gets cut off just as it's about to hit that kind of sweet spot. Quad Cortex on pretty much all of the patches at a high gain have a very beautiful, natural sounding sustain that I really do enjoy. That being said, although the Quad Cortex feels fantastic, there's no latency with your right hand picking hand. It feels very responsive and not squashy in any way whatsoever. There's something about the left hand when I'm fretting the notes that doesn't seem to feel alive. Recently, I did transition over to the GT1000 Core as my primary digital amp modeling technology, and that has the AIRD technology, which feels like a valve amplifier. you may think I'm like overhyping it, but seriously, as soon as you plug that unit in and you play, whether you don't like the presets that's loaded in on that boss out the box, it feels unbelievable. And that was one of the major reasons why I went from using a £2,000 Kemper profiler to a £500 GT1000 core. And since having that experience with the GT1000 core, I instantly missed it on the Quad Cortex. Although it feels responsive, as I mentioned, there's no latency, it sounds a lot better than all the other digital modelers that I've tried, it doesn't feel as inspiring to use it. Obviously, all of the thoughts shared in today's video are just my first impressions, of which may change over time. So if you want to see my final verdict and my full review, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that when I upload it. And check out the links in the video description down below for when I release my ultimate guide for the Quad Cortex. This is my course that will take you through all of the settings on the Quad Cortex so you can get the most out of it if you decide to pick one up. But as always, I've been Ben Rowlands. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.